all of you for joining us this afternoon at the board meeting of New York City School Bus Umbrella Services. So I'd like to call the meeting to order and note for the record that we have a quorum to conduct business. As a reminder, please note that board meetings are being recorded for the convenience of those unable to attend, and their recording will be posted to the NYCSBUS YouTube channel following the meeting. As an initial matter and to facilitate preparation of the meeting minutes, I would like to designate Board Director Lynn as interim secretary for this meeting. Next, I will preview the agenda, which today includes the approval of minutes from our last meeting on February 9th, 2022, consideration of resolutions, a meeting of the audit subcommittee to discuss the audit plan with our external auditors, and the consideration of another resolution. Our first item of business is the approval of the minutes of our February 9th, 2022 meeting. Board directors, this is item number 2 in your package. May I have a motion to consider the minutes? Thank you, Bob. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, PV. Are there any questions about the minutes?
Nope.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye, Russ.
Aye.
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 Nada was an aye on the phone.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you, Nada. None opposed, the minutes are approved. The next item on our agenda is consideration of resolutions. Directors, this is item number 3 in your package. Our first resolution for consideration authorizes the CEO to execute contracts in excess of $100,000. In accordance with our bylaws, this resolution requires a 4/5 majority vote. May I have a motion to consider?
So moved.
Thank you, PV. Second from Bob. Nicholas, would you like to describe the contracts in excess of $100,000?
Happy to. The first contract is with Electric.ai. Board members, you may remember we approved a contract with Electric at the last board meeting. They are providing our back office core IT services. We are requesting additional spending authority with Electric because, as you know, we are moving away from MV Transportation, ending the transition services agreement. And one of the services MV provides is network management, internet. And so we've had to stand up a lot of our own network management, internet service providers, VPN, firewalls. We obviously deal with a lot of sensitive data, so we have to create some important protections for our data systems. So this is spending authority with our existing vendor to help us stand up the systems that we need to go off on our own. The next contract is with BJH. This is a firm that in response to an RFP, we've liked to work with them for real estate and brokerage services. We have 5 properties, and one of those leases is up in August. And so we'd like to retain this firm to help us with the renewal of that lease. This firm will also help us with, we have some space constrained facilities, some aged facilities, and this firm will provide us with short, medium, and long-term plans to make the best use of the space we have. So that's with BJH. Marks Paneth would be our retained independent auditors. And the amount we're asking you to approve is for 2 years of audits plus filing fees.
Nicholas, can you talk a little bit about what kind of facilities you're looking at here? Is it like parking slots or?
No, this is really our depots. So, sort of the facility we're in today here in the Bronx, we have, limited office space. We have space that is perhaps not utilized to the maximum ability. They're small spots. We have to figure out how to fit in our staff and sort of move them in set it up for the age of COVID, where distancing continues to be an issue, and how we can make the best use of the space that we have to work with. So it's really primarily to work with the the buildings that are on the properties that we operate out of.
Got it. And the amount here, is that a fixed fee or is it based on some commission aspect here?
It is a fixed, so it's sort of twofold. It's a fixed fee for the work we're having them do for the space planning. And then it's an estimate for the brokerage services for the fees that we may incur with the renewal of the lease.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions from the board about the resolution? Seeing and hearing none, I will now move to a vote on resolution for item number 3. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye, Russ.
Aye.
And for the record, that was an aye from Nada.
Thank you, Nicholas. Hearing unanimous approval, the resolution is approved. Our next resolution for consideration authorizes the CEO to execute contracts between $20,000 and $100,000. Can I have a motion to consider?
So move.
Thank you, PV. Second from Bob. Nicholas, could you please describe these contracts?
Sure, of course. The first contract is with Precision. This is for maintenance and parts and repairs. The board has approved several of these. This is to, as we have new vendors for our fleet maintenance, we'll bring them to you for approval. And this is a new vendor providing fleet maintenance services. The second contract is with Fleetio. This is a fleet management software. This is also related to our efforts to move away from MB transportation. MB has used a different software that wasn't particularly useful for our operations, and we've conducted review of existing enterprise fleet management systems, narrowed it down to 2 providers that we had come and do demos for our maintenance staff. And in consultation with our maintenance staff and our senior management, we determined that Fleetio was really the product that's going to help us move forward with just better fleet maintenance data and services. So we're asking the board's approval for Fleetio so that we can use this as we transition away from MB. The next contracts are ones with Verizon. Verizon will be our primary internet service provider and for all 5 of our locations. And the contract with LDI is to provide on-site printers, paper, ink, and just service for those for that equipment. Also at all 5 of our sites.
I have 2 questions. Is Fleetio a replacement for something? So is this like replacement cost, or that you don't have any savings from giving up MB?
Yeah, so there will be sort of a trade-off. So right now we have we pay for the fleet management service that MB provides through our monthly transition services account expense, which is $260,000 thereabouts. So once we terminate that transition services agreement, we obviously don't have to pay MB for that. The reason MB is going to be PB, sorry, the reason it's going to be sort of a wash is because that monthly payment we make covers things like fleet management, things like internet. It also covers the salaries of staff who have been providing services to NYCSBUS under MB. We're onboarding the vast majority of those people, so it'll come probably close to a wash after we take all of that into account.
Okay. And the second one, do you have any backup ISPs, or are you just holding the primary? That's it.
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
Is there a backup ISP?
Oh, yes. Every site has backup ISP. Yes.
Okay.
And that one I can share with the board. That one it doesn't trigger the thresholds, but we have backup ISPs at every site. Yeah.
Who's the backup?
Spectrum.
Okay. Got it.
So Nicholas, does those represent annual costs here for each of those contracts?
Yes, for these would be annual amounts. Yeah, the Fleetio is a 1-year contract, and Verizon, LDI are both also 1-year amounts from this moment on, and Precision as well. It's basically what we anticipate spending on them in a full calendar year. So they'll split our fiscal years, but it's what we expect the sort of the calendar year expense to be. I can carry if going back to for the other contracts, a lot of the electric expenditure is one time. About I would say 75% of it is one-time expenses for setup of the network, setup of the firewalls. The recurring expenses for electric are about $140,000 a year total. And for Marks Paneth, as I mentioned, that is a multi-year expenditure amount for 2 years worth of audits.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
there any further questions or discussion about this resolution from the board? Hearing none, I will move to vote on this resolution, item number 4. All those in favor of resolution number 4, please voice your vote now. Aye. Russ?
Aye.
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 Nada was an aye.
Bob, is that an aye from you as well? You're on mute if you're trying to talk to us.
Hey,
Bob, you're on mute.
No, Nada, you're okay, Nada. It's Bob that's on mute.
I'm
You
now
got
off
your-
mute. Wasn't it item 3 that we just voted on?
that was item 3 contains 2 resolutions, Russ.
Yes.
Pardon me, 2 resolutions within item 3.
Yep.
Second resolution within item 3.
Yep.
Is that an aye from you, Bob?
Yes, it is.
Excellent. Unanimous consent, the resolution is approved. Our next agenda item is a meeting of the audit subcommittee for a presentation on the audit plan. The board will stand in recess and I will turn it over to Carrie, who chairs the audit subcommittee, to preside. Carrie, take it away.
Thank you, Director Buckley. The audit subcommittee is called to order. I know for the record that every director is a member of this subcommittee. We're joined here today by Warren Ruppel and Philip Marciano and from Marks Paneth, which is the firm we have retained as our external auditor. Warren will be presenting the audit plan for our consideration. We are also joined by Kevin Chris, Sergi Sira, and Hoya Sai from the BTQ, which is the firm retained by NYCSBUS to handle financial matters. Warren, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Kerry, and thank you for passing the resolution previous, so appointing us as the independent auditors. Would it be helpful if I share the screen, or do you have the information with you, or?
Sharing the screen would be useful.
Okay. So who's ever the host has to give me the rights to do that.
Good to see you, Warren.
Good to see you too, PV. It's a small world in New York City government.
Very small.
Oh, you might click on him. The dots there. Maybe that. You can make him a host. You can make him a co-host. Or
Yeah.
you just make him a co-host. Down one more.
Okay, Warren, I just made you a co-host, so you should be able to present.
Okay, great.
Yeah, perfect.
You should see my screen, which is an audit planning communication. So the first thing you might ask me as to why this doesn't always say Marks Paneth. The reason is Marks Paneth became part of a new organization, CBIZ.Marks Paneth, effective January 1st. So going forward, our prior services had been issued under our Marks Paneth, and going forward, we operate under CBIZ.Marks Paneth and associate entity Meyer Hoffman McCann. But we're essentially the same. We're required by them, so it's essentially the same firm. Engagement team, contact information for Phil and myself in case you ever need to contact us. Dan McAwee is another person on the engagement who does a independent review. Minette Adeo will be the day-to-day manager assigned, and we'll determine the other staff when we get a little better sense of the timing. So I'll try to make this brief, but I want to cover today our timeline, various responsibilities of our firm as well as management, our deliverables, planned audit approach, required communications, some industry updates, independence matters, and our engagement letters, which are here. So timing, you'll be reported as a component unit of the City of New York. So you have to report to meet the City Controller's Office reporting requirements by September 30th. And you also have some reporting responsibilities under the Public Authorities Accountability Act, which requires you to report by September 30th as well. Tax services, we've prepared your tax returns and assisted in the preparation of the exemption application. So we'll do that again for the fiscal June 30th, 22 audit. And that's Due date for that is in March of 2023, or it's actually in May of 2023, but we'll try to have that done a few months before time. So our responsibility is to perform an audit in accordance with U.S. auditing standards as well as government auditing standards. We'll issue a report under both U.S. GAS as well as government auditing standards. And we also report on various supplemental information that's attached to the financial statement. There's a management's discussion analysis, which we provide very little, if any, audit coverage on, which is typical of how a government audits perform. This is a long list of responsibilities of management, which I'm not going to read, but essentially management's responsible for maintaining the books and records of the organizations, maintaining their internal control systems, and preparation of the financial statements, et cetera. Obviously, we can lend assistance in preparing the financials, which we've had various discussions with the entity already. So we kind of have an idea where we're going with the financial statement presentation. But these are a number of different responsibilities that are listed here. So our deliverables for the audit will be our opinions on the financial statements, this pre-audit presentation. Before we issue our report, when we get to September, we'll meet again with the audit committee prior to issuing the report to communicate the results of our audit. We'll issue a report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance and other matters in accordance with government auditing standards. You report on investment compliance and tax returns. Planned audit approach. So when when talk about internal controls, people kind of focus in on second approval of a payment requisition, et cetera. And those are all important specific controls. But we also take a look at the entity-wide controls. People call it the tone at the top, how interested and how seriously the organization takes internal controls and proper management of its affairs into consideration. So some of the things that we consider that are listed here. Specific areas of our audit approach are listed here. Just going to highlight it too, a couple of them. The third bullet here, capital asset existence and inventory. So you own a lot of school buses, and this is the first year you're being audited. So we'll have to do some procedures to make sure that there's a proper inventory of the buses, that they're properly accounted for, that they exist. So we'll be visiting some bus depots along the way to make sure that that's all in order and do some sampling of that. And then this bullet down here, lease standard implementation. The city is implementing something called GASB 87, and that's a new lease accounting standard. So currently for governments, leases really aren't recorded on the books unless they're a capital lease. But for instance, your leases for your bus depots, the new standard requires you to take a present value of all the future minimum lease payments under those leases and record that as a liability on your books, and then record a right to use asset on your books as an asset. So, and it works the same way in any instances you're the lessor. So we've had some initial conversations with Surjit and just in terms of making sure the data is there, and we can provide some assistance in coming up with those numbers. And then also your pension benefit obligation. So your employees are a part of a private sector plan. The GASB, which sets the rules for accounting rules for governmental organizations, has different requirements in terms of how you calculate amounts that are recorded on your books relative to pensions. So we've had some initial discussions. We'll have to have further discussions as to whether or not New York City Bus is the predominant employer in that plan, and whether you have to provide GASB numbers, et cetera. So those are the three big issues that we'll be working through as part of, not issues, but just areas of focus. And the rest of these are more or less standard items that you find in any audit, but those three are really kind of the more important ones for this entity. With any audit approach, there's audit risks that need to be addressed. And these really come from the auditing standards. One is management override of controls. So you can have the best internal control system, but if someone from a higher level management can tell a accounts payable clerk, well, I don't care what our manual says, just go do this. That's called management override of controls. And, there's various audit procedures that we have in place to enable us to detect those. And we also take a look at revenue recognition. That's always an area of focus for auditors. Your revenue stream is fairly straightforward in terms of your contract with the city, but again, revenue recognition is always an area that auditors focus on. Just to add to the fun for this year, there's a new auditing standard, which is going to change the format of the auditor's report and make some other minor changes. So when you see what your auditor's report looks like for this year, you'll notice it's different from reports that have been issued for other entities in the past. It's really more rearranging the items that were already there, plus adding a little bit more detail as to what the auditor's responsibilities are. In terms of estimates and judgments, your allowance for doubtful accounts, wherever you stand with the Department of Ed at the end of the year in terms of do they owe you money, do you owe them money for advances, et cetera. We'll take a look at those calculations to make sure we're comfortable with them. And then the pension liability, I guess stole my thunder in the audit focus areas, but again, that's kind of an important item that that we'll be taking a look at. We've been the auditors for the New York City School Support Services since its inception, and they had a very similar situation where they had their staff members as part of a private sector plan. So it took them a couple of years to get the audit results. So we had to make a modification in our auditor's report to report that for the first couple of years. I'm hoping that we have all the information that we need and we'll have the actuarial calculations done and not have that situation for this entity, but if it does, that would be the remedy for that. And that's all public information for school support services. So I'm not telling you anything out of school here.
So I see you've got 46 pages to go. I don't want to lose the train of thought here. On the previous page, you talked about reporting leases according to GASB 87. Or is it just and the question is, do you actually have the information on leases sufficient enough to report in the manner that we have to?
Yeah, I mean, based upon our preliminary conversations, it seems like there's not that large a volume of leases that to be analyzed. I think the bus depots are one, could be office space. It's manageable.
Okay. And
So-
the second question I had was, how are we recording the assets that we have? I don't know that there was valuation on them. There might have been valuation on them when it was with the previous owner. So is it what we paid for them?
Yeah, it's basically, I mean, it was basically a purchase of those buses. So we'll record them at essentially the purchase price on the date that they were required. And then we'll do some work to help management come up with the remaining estimated useful life for all the rest of the buses and then depreciate those assets as go along.
Thanks.
Good. This talks about audit approach. So the audit committees get, this is kind of, can be new to folks, but under the auditing standards, we're required to ask the audit committee members whether they have any knowledge or suspicion of fraud at the organization. So I'd like to make that inquiry for the audit committee members now.
I know of none.
I know of none.
Okay, I see heads shaking, so I'm gonna go with that. At least I could see people, and I was worried that somebody's on mute telling me about some giant fraud, but I don't think that's the case here. Accounting principles for this year, obviously you had some limited financial activity in the prior year, but the city controller's office didn't require you to have an outside audit. So as part of our audit, we'll take a look at the opening balances that were recorded at the beginning of the year, and they'll be prepared on a basis that's consistent with what the accounting principles are at the end of the year. At the end of the audit, we'll also inform you of any adjustments that were made to the financial statements as a result of the audit, and we'll inform you of any adjustments that were not made because they were deemed to be immaterial by the client, which we would concur with. In terms of internal controls, if we have any internal control matters that rise to the level of being material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, we'll report them as such as part of our reporting process. If we have some best practice recommendations, we'll also share those with you as well, even though they might not rise to the level of being material weakness or significant deficiency, which are two terms that are defined in the auditing standards. In terms of independence, there's two separate arms of our firm that do the audit work and the tax work. So CBIZ.Marks Paneth is the tax return preparer. So we're just making you aware of their name. We're not aware of any outside consulting activities that we perform relative to accounting matters. We have a process in place to search the name of your organization to make sure that we have no internal contacts, and we've done that, and there's no issues, no independence issues to report to you. Already talked about the industry updates, the new audit opinion and GASB 87 on leases. So I'm going to pass by that. And then this appendix has our engagement letters. There's a separate engagement letter for the audit work itself, which is, we'll give you a draft of the audit opinion here, in case you have an interest in that. And then this is actually a draft of the engagement letter that we'll be asking to be signed. And we're making that available to the audit committee members to obviously make sure you're aware of the terms of the engagement. And this is the engagement letter for the tax services that are being performed. All different formats of each. That's really the substance of what I wanted to present. And just so that you're familiar with CBIZ.Marks Paneth, with our becoming part of this organization, we're now like one of the top 10 accounting firms in the country. So become considerably larger. Marks Paneth has a very nice government auditing practice focused here on the city. Some of you know me. Prior to coming to Marks Paneth about 13 or so years ago, I spent 12 years as the assistant controller for accounting of the city. So I'm kind of familiar with the city's accounting, financial reporting. And prior to that, I worked on the city audit many years as a manager with KPMG and Deloitte. So I've been around the city enough, and look forward to working with entities that are startups, because there's always nice, interesting issues that come up. But that's a little bit of background on myself and the firm here. So I'm not going to spend any more time on that unless you have some questions.
I have two more.
Sure.
One is, are we filing the 990 for last year?
I believe that's already filed.
It has been filed,
Yes?
correct?
Great.
Yep.
Okay. And then if we are a component unit of the city, do we go before the city controller's audit committee?
Yes, they've gone to a different format where they only invite selected organizations. Year to year, they used to have all the city component units and all the business improvement districts, and it was too full of an agenda, so they've cut back on it. I suspect that you being a new entity, that you'll have the pleasure of being invited to go there and make a presentation.
Thank you.
Which will accompany you.
Okay, thank you, Warren.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the audit plan as presented by Mr. Ruppel?
So moved, Russ.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you.
Second.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, any other discussions or questions from the subcommittee? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye, Russ.
The audit plan is approved. This concludes the agenda of the audit subcommittee. The subcommittee is adjourned. Directors will now resume our meetings of the full board. I will turn it back to Ross.
Thank you, Carrie. Board is back in order. Carrie, can you please present the final item for today's agenda?
Thank you, Russ. I move that the board approve the audit plan as recommended to and approved by the audit subcommittee.
Thank you, Carrie. Can I have a motion to approve the audit plan at the full board? Thank you, Bob. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, PV. Any discussions or further questions from the board on the audit plan? Hearing none. All those in favor, please indicate as such now. Aye, Russ.
Aye.
Nada, do you have a vote?
Yes.
Nada's a yes.
Yes.
Hearing unanimous consent, the audit plan is approved. That concludes our agenda for this meeting. The next meeting of New York City School Bus Umbrella Services is to be determined and will be scheduled and noticed at the appropriate time.
Can I just ask a question first?
Absolutely, Bob.
Just next session, could we have I assume it's going to be close, if not after the end of the school year. It would be wonderful to have a report of how we've done and what are the metrics, what are the objectives that we've sought to achieve and how we did. And I'd love to sort of have a narrative of how the first year has been next time we get together.
Yeah, absolutely. We will work. Yeah, we will work on that.
Good, thank you.
Make sure that happens.
Happy to note as well, the next time we get together will most likely be in person, since we are no longer allowed to meet remotely as of June 10th. So looking forward to seeing you all in person, assuming our next meeting is after then.
Great. Let's do it in Florida.
Not in the summer, PV,
True.
in Maine.
Well, I think we should protest, not Florida. We could go to Hawaii.
There you go.
Good compromise.
maybe.
Sure, it will take place within the 5 boroughs for the record. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, PV. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please indicate your approval now. Aye,
Aye.
Russ.
All right.
Aye.
Bye.
Hearing unanimous consent, the motion carries. We
Nada,
are
would you hold on a
adjourned.
second?
Sorry?
I was just going to talk to Nada about some of the things I'm doing with some of the parents in the Bronx. Just ask her
Wonderful.
to hold on for a second.
Yeah.
Have a great evening, everyone.
One.
Goodbye.
you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Aye.